one thing is just connections, right? Like you get to meet a bunch of other people that also like the same thing that you do, right? Because they're there to volunteer because they love the same thing. And I think now you're creating community outside of the community that you just left from the military, right? Because when you leave the military, you're not just losing your housing and your job, you're also losing your community that you just had, right?
Absolutely.
So this is a way, by volunteering again with something that you're passionate about, finding a new community that you can connect with and build another family around.
Why do military veterans do well in business and excel in their careers? Find out more in this episode of VetBizTV. Today we speak with Jorjio Hopkins, a U.S. Marine Corps veteran and real estate investor, to discuss his journey and transition out of the military. Who was Jorjio Hopkins growing up, and why did you decide to join the military?
Yeah, man, that question fires me up, man. It's fun reflecting back on who I was. And most recently, there was an interesting memory that I had that I think relates to what my aspirations are today. But I remember growing up, me and my brother, our favorite day of the week was Sunday. And you know why?
No.
It's because every Sunday we would get this massive Sunday newspaper delivered to our front door, and we loved it. So we would grab the Sunday newspaper, we'd tear it open, we'd pull out like the Home Depot and the Walmart, and then we'd literally start figuring out how to construct a treehouse in our backyard. Like all the materials that we need, my brother would pull out like a measuring tape and he'd like measure out how much distance, and then based on like the size that we saw in like the chart, he'd figure out like, all right, how many planks will we need in order to like build this side, that side, the roof, everything, like the stairs leading up to it. Like we'd figure out everything, but I was the numbers guy. So as he's figuring out like how much material, I'm drawing everything out, I'm writing all the costs, and then tallying everything up to like, okay, how much money would we need in order to like make this a reality and like build this thing. So like that was like literally for like years growing up, our favorite thing to do every single Sunday.
That's awesome.
We would like repeat again and again and again. Never wound up doing a treehouse in the backyard, but again, it kind of connects a little bit to what I do today. But so that was me at like a very early age. This was like elementary school for me. And my brother was the same age, he's just a couple years older than me. But going into high school, grew up in Madison, Wisconsin, so I was very active in sports. So I did track, I did basketball, I did football. My junior and senior year, I was varsity captain of the football and track team, so very active. I was involved from a leadership standpoint in high school as well. Got selected by our principal to be kind of like the one of the students who was like the ambassador for our grade from a leadership standpoint. So we'd essentially sit in on committee meetings and listen to what the administration wanted to enact throughout the school, and then we would be the voice for our class on whether that was a good thing or not, and then how to roll it out and implement it throughout the school. So very active, very involved. I was also in show choir in high school, so I loved to sing and dance, mainly because I'll be completely honest, it was the most beautiful girls in our school were tended to be in the show choir, so I wanted to you know, dance and be close, and it was a lot of fun. But dancing today is still one of my passions. But anyways, graduated.
You're gonna do a skit in a minute?
Yeah, maybe. You want me to bust out some dance? Love it, man. So that was high school. Actually, and another huge shout out to my high school track coach, Chad Gunnelson, because without him, I wouldn't have had any aspirations to go to college. It really was never on my radar until I really met him, and he put that on my radar and was a huge advocate for me in many different ways. And I can't thank him enough because there was just so much that he did for me. But not on my radar to go to college. Eventually was on my radar thanks to Chad, and then applied to several different places. Wanted to play football, wanted to, you know, still stay active. Chose to go to UW-Madison for my undergrad. While I did that, my best friend in high school, Daniel Aguayo, also enlisted in the Marine Corps. So he went off and enlisted. He went to boot camp, came back. I was done my first semester, and I know this is getting long, so I'll wrap it up here.
Keep going.
But so he came back from boot camp after I finished this like winter break. So I finished my first semester of college at UW. And then I saw just a transformation in him, man. And you've seen it many times, I'm sure. And it's incredible to see who someone is before they go and then who they become afterwards. And I was just like, my man, like that's amazing. I want to like learn more. So
and the uniform, right?
And the uniform, just like sharp. So I went with him to the recruiting office. He had to get some leave paper signed, and then while we're in the recruiting office, of course, the recruiter just eats it up, man. He's like, "Hey, man, hop up on the pull-up bar." So I hop up on there. He's like, "All right, crank out how many you can." I think I cranked out like 22 pull-ups. He's like, "Whoa, okay, like you're a stud, man. You're a stud. Like, let's go. Let's get you on this ASVAB test or like whatever it was. Let's get you on this thing." And then I was like, "Hey, I don't know what you're talking about." Okay. So they like slowed up, showed me a couple videos of like motivational stuff, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is pretty legit. Ultimately, long story short, they wound up connecting me to the NRTC unit at UW-Madison, and then talked to the MOI there, the Marine Officer Instructor. And then just the more I learned, the more excited I got. And I always felt like as a kid that I had some kind of higher vision or some kind of higher aspiration that I was due to strive towards. And I felt like this could be a great way of me serving, and again, motivated by the transformation I saw within my friend. I wanted to certainly be a part of something that was just so fascinating, so professional, so sharp, clean cut, and that's why I want to go Marines and not any other branch. But
that's awesome, man.
But
so you went to officer school.
Yep.
And what was your job while you were in?
Great question. So went to NRTC program. Your junior year of college, you go to OCS, Officer Candidate School. So that's kind of like the officer equivalent of boot camp. Came back, then you finish out your senior year, then you commission. Once you commission, you go to then the basic school, which is essentially like MCT. There, that's when you essentially are going through it's just like Marine basic training, essentially. Like as an officer, you're gonna lead a platoon, and this is how to do it. So training on how to do that as an infantryman. And then from there, you're ranked amongst your peers, and then from there you get to kind of select which path from a career standpoint or MOS standpoint that you want to go. So I selected, my top 3 were logistics, supply, and then supply aviation. Wound up getting logistics, so I was a logistics officer in the Marine Corps, and wound up being stationed in 29 Palms for a while with 7th Marines for a little bit, and then Victor 3-4, 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines. So infantry battalion. So I got to actually, they weren't even created. They were disbanded or kind of torn down and dismantled before we got there. And then the Commandant of the Marine Corps decided that they still wanted a Victor 3-4, and they had us recreate it. So when I got there, I was one of 2 people on site that were there to help it expand and kind of get off the ground again. So we built that from 2 people to over 1,000-man organization, and then deployed overseas. So
29 stumps.
29 stumps, man.
I remember it very well.
Yeah, you probably still the smells.
Well,
never forget the smells.
But there's nothing else around it. It's literally out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So, being in logistics, I was in logistics as well.
Yeah,
while I was in. So that's interesting. But how, I know you explained the story earlier with you and your brother, and you doing the math and all that stuff, and I know that you're in the field you are in now has to do with financials and stuff like that. So can you just explain a little bit about what you do now, and where do you see yourself going in the future? Yeah,
that's a phenomenal question, and I can bridge the gap too of transitioning out of the Marine Corps and then to where I am now. Ultimately, it was a tough decision to transition out of the Marine Corps. I love the Marine Corps. I wanted to serve actually for a long time. And you know this, just as most of the Marines and really any service member, a lot of where you go isn't really up to you, right? You're kind of at the whims of, the powers that be to select where you're going. And so I wanted to stay in, but during my last deployment, my wife had just finished up her master's program, and she was applying for jobs both in California where we were stationed, but then also in Wisconsin where we're from. So during that deployment, she moved back to Wisconsin to be close to family and friends. Then she was hunting for jobs in both Wisconsin and California, wound up landing her first career opportunity in Wisconsin. So when I got back from deployment, I said, hey, babe, you take it, right? And I'll figure out what to do next. Tried to figure out a way to get stationed somewhere up in the Midwest near Wisconsin. There was no guarantees, and no guarantees could be made to me. So ultimately I decided to, if you can't get me close, then like, I guess I'll have to get out. So
Sure.
Ultimately wound up transitioning. And then from there, I did, this is a great resource for anybody out there that's in the stage of transition. There's a program called American Corporate Partners. Phenomenal program where essentially it's a nonprofit that helps pair transitioning veterans with civilian partners, right? So people who are working in the civilian world, right, who want to be a mentor to veterans. I got paired with an incredible mentor, Denny Shepler. Sorry, Denny, if I'm mispronouncing the last name, but Denny was incredible. He was the CEO of a national accounting company, and he poured into me so much wisdom and so many incredible insights. And it's a year-long mentorship, and so we would meet sometimes multiple times in a month, but I think the requirement was only to meet monthly. But he just poured so much into me over that time, and he helped me identify what my strengths, skill sets, and abilities are, and what my passions were, and connected with potential career aspirations. So
that's awesome.
Ultimately helped me identify that I wanted to be in the space that I am now, knowing that I had a strength in logistics, but I wanted to be, so to talk about where I am now, I now work for a private real estate company. So we essentially do real estate investments nationwide. So we're acquiring assets and raising funds to be able to acquire assets to produce a return for investors. So that's what I do today. I love it. There's like so much, both on the acquisition side, there's so much fun to be had, but both on the fundraising side as well, there's also so much fun. Like, again, it's all, I don't know, very exciting for me, but Denny helped me identify that was something that I was really interested in, and we can walk through for everyone what the exercise he took me through to get me to that point. But ultimately, once I figured out that's where I wanted to be, I then figured out, okay, I think I want to make that a career. I want to do that for 40 plus years. How do I get there from just being, this guy that has some logistics skills to being able to do real estate investments? And so I went back to school, got my master's in real estate. I decided to make that jump. And then I did a couple other things as well. Concurrently, I realized, and again, back at a young age, I was savvy with numbers. For whatever reason, I just really enjoyed it. And I had a unique ability to do financial underwriting for real estate investment opportunities. And so I essentially did that as a real estate consultant for third-party companies that didn't have a person in-house to do those same duties.
Sure.
So was just doing it for a fee. In hindsight, I wish I had done it for equity and deals that they would close. That I think things would be a little different right now. But hindsight's 2020. I didn't know what I didn't know at the time, and so I just, hey, I'm just trying to put food on the table, so I'll just do it for a fee, and did well through that process. Just networking a lot with both owners of real estate, brokers, etc., investors as well. And through the powers of networking, got connected with a company called MLG Capital. And then about a year after first connecting with some people on the team, wound up getting a job offer thrown my way from the team to join them on their capital team, which is essentially the team going out raising funds and also going out finding and closing on potential acquisitions. So that's what I do today. That's kind of the long path that I took to get there.
That's a great story, man. I never knew about ACP, but that's a great resource. We'll share that on the site while we're putting this all together.
Please do.
So when you got out and you were getting mentored by ACP, were you working at that time? Is that what you were doing by yourself? You were basically just working as a third-party guy as you're getting mentored by Denny?
Yeah, great question. So I was doing a lot during that time.
Yeah.
So the mentorship started with Denny while I was still in that transition phase, coming out of the military. So I was still technically in the military, but I was working for the consulting company out in DC at the time. So to tie up how crazy this time of life was for me, I was stationed in California, had to move to DC on my own dime, right? Because it wasn't a PCS.
Yep.
So I had to move on my own dime from California to DC to work for the consulting company while still, again, in the Marine Corps. So still getting my normal Marine Corps paycheck, but like working for a civilian company, which is like kind of cool, but also like you're not getting paid DC money. So it's like, it was a little rough, but so was doing that. And then after I finished that, wound up, and I wanted to work for that company, but I figured out it wasn't a great fit. And I wanted to be in Wisconsin, and they didn't, at that time, like having people work remotely. So ultimately wasn't a great fit. And so I moved back to Wisconsin and landed a job that was it was 5 minutes door to door from where me and my wife were living at the time. And wound up doing logistics manager role. Again, that was my strength, that was my specialty. So Denny was with me essentially from the consulting company through working with this logistics company and then helping me identify, okay, yes, you're good at logistics, right? It's a strength of yours, but is it a passion? I identified that it wasn't for me. And so he helped me identify what was a passion and how I could shift into that industry. And so that's where went back to school, got the master's, started the real estate consulting company doing the financial analysis for other groups. And then again, through the powers of networking, was able to fully transition. And I actually, this is interesting, I actually left the logistics role. This is January of 2020. I left it because I was making enough in the consulting to essentially
replace
the income to be fine. And so, and I figured if I could, because I was still working, I mean, it was more than 40 hours a week, but I was still working the 9 to 5, so to speak, at the logistics company, and I'd come home and like do everything else. Plus we had a newborn. So our son was born in March of 2019. So a lot of chaos, as you could imagine, doing all these things. And me and my wife were doing like real estate investing as well. So we were doing like a live and flip type situation. We purchased a 3-unit property, lived in one, renovated all of them, and we were renting it out and living for free. We call it house hacking or wealth hacking. But
that's awesome, though.
We're doing all of this all at the same time, which again, the craziest part of my life that I never want to revisit again. It was just hectic. And I think my wife probably said the same. But she's been a trooper throughout everything. But I know we're getting off task, so
no, that's great, and I'm glad you shared that because that just shows you how important that mentorship is when you get out.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of guys struggle in that first year. They're trying to figure out what they want to do. And I mean, Denny basically helped you figure out what you were good at, what your strengths were. And now it's led you in the direction that you're in now. So that's a extremely powerful story. Thanks for sharing it.
Yeah, appreciate it.
So through all of your experiences in the military and maybe even after you got out, because you learned a ton about yourself then too, but what do you think 2 to 3 takeaways that you took away from the military that have helped you propel in your success today?
Great. Phenomenal question. I feel like I've said that a lot, so I'll try to like pause. But I think one big thing, and there's 2 that come to mind, but one major thing is that like the hard work doesn't stop, right? Like you worked your butt off in the military, and it's not going to be any easier in the civilian world, not if you want to be successful, right? Like, real talk, you have to put in the work. You have to work your butt off if you want to be successful in any endeavor. So, like, that doesn't stop. Another thing is processes and procedures, SOPs. We had SOPs like driven into us in the Marine Corps, and I think that is something that is applicable, very much applicable to the business world, and that will set you up for success in your own business or just working in corporate America. So understanding SOPs or creating SOPs is very, very valuable. So you can take a process from start to finish just through a script, following a written path. I think that's extremely important. A third thing, did you say 3?
2 to 3
things, 2 to 3 things. Those are the first 2 that come to mind, but like hard work doesn't stop, and then SOPs, like really leverage your knowledge and ability. Even if you are infantry guy, right? You have your SOPs at like every stage of operation, right? So you can take that into the business world, that same mentality in your leadership, right? Because there's small team leaders as well. You can take your leadership and just your understanding of SOPs and go do extremely well in corporate America, which a lot of people don't see those same skills or transferability of things. made me think of another resource that I think people that are transitioning should definitely tap into. Deloitte, which is a consulting company, but Deloitte has a program, again, for transitioning military members, where they fly you out to their campus down in Dallas-Fort Worth in Texas. So they fly you out in their dime while you're still in the military. I think you have to be within the last 6 months of transition, similar thing, or maybe the last year. But they fly you out, and then they put you through a 4-day program to where you're essentially learning how to communicate what you did in the Marine Corps or in the military to what a civilian can understand, a civilian employer.
Sure.
So they transfer the talk into civilian speak, and they help you through that process. And so I did that program. One of my good buddies that I served with actually worked for Deloitte, and he told me about it. So I want to share that information because that was an incredible program that really helped me learn how to convey what I did to something that would make sense to someone in the civilian world.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point, because you don't think about the soft skills. You only think about the things you did physically. Right. Your job, like I was a mechanic, or I was a gunner, or I was logistics.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of soft skills, like the leadership and all those sorts of things that fall into that too. I love what you said about SOPs, because that's habits, right?
Yeah.
You can relate that to habits, and your daily habits greatly affect your day, your success, your goals, all those sorts of things. So if you don't structure your life properly, you probably won't get to where you want to be, at least not as fast as you want to get there.
Right.
You could probably get there eventually, but you're going to go through a lot of struggle without having your day set up properly. I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, if I don't work out in the morning, I feel it here.
Yeah, same.
More
100%.
than anything. Yeah. So
same
I love that you shared SOPs. So being part of a nonprofit, I know that helps me greatly, giving back to the community, serving, helping others and stuff like that. And I know you're heavily involved in other nonprofits as well. Can you talk about that a little bit and how that's helped you, in your journey after the military?
Yeah. So I volunteer for a nonprofit called Bunker Labs, and we talked about it on the other segment, but ultimately it's a nonprofit that's focused on helping veteran entrepreneurs either start or grow an existing business and providing them the resources and connections in order to do so. For me, I think volunteering in general, whether it's for a nonprofit or otherwise, I think volunteering gives you a sense of purpose beyond your day-to-day, right? And it breaks up the minutia, or like it's so easy to get trapped into this cycle of, especially if you're at a 9-to-5 doing something that you don't enjoy, so easy to just punch the time clock, right? You go in 9 o'clock, punch out 5 o'clock, and you get into this just cycle without feeling valued, without feeling, any sense of like passion or any true emotion, right, in the things that you're doing. I think volunteering is something that you actually have a heart for, is a way to get those feelings if you're not enjoying your day-to-day, right?
Sure.
So I think anyone, even if you love your day-to-day like I do, right, I think getting involved with a nonprofit, but again, with the caveat of it being something that you're passionate about, something that you're truly interested in, I think that will give you a lot of fuel and energy. And one thing is just connections, right? Like you get to meet a bunch of other people that also like the same thing that you do, right? Because they're there to volunteer because they love the same thing. And I think now you're creating community outside of the community that you just left from the military, right? Because when you leave the military, you're not just losing your housing and your job, you're also losing your community that you just had, right?
Absolutely.
So this is a way, by volunteering again with something that you're passionate about, finding a new community that you can connect with and build another family around, right?
That's awesome, man. Thanks for sharing that. So the second to last question here, one of the things that I want to talk to you about, and you've hit on it in numerous things already, but piece of advice you would give to a veteran who's 6 months out from their termination or their exit date when they're getting out of the military, what advice would you give them, at that point in their career if they're contemplating getting out of the military?
Great question. So, and I'm going to keep saying it because these are all phenomenal questions. But the question, or the two things that I would say, for one, start early. So even if you don't know whether you're transitioning, but you're like, maybe I might, then you should be on it. Like, pretend that you are, right? Because my old CEO at Victor 3-4, he would tell me, hey, it's better to have 2 options than 1, right? So give yourself 2 options, prep yourself to be able to transition, and if you ultimately decide, no, I want to stay in, well, now you got 2 options, rather than getting yourself to the point to where it's your EAS and maybe you have an extension, maybe you don't, but like you're either staying in or you're getting out. There's no, like, you didn't give yourself any options if you waited till the last minute, right?
Yeah.
So give yourself a couple options. Everything in life is better when you have options.
Absolutely.
And so that's the first thing, start early. The second thing, I would do what Denny advised me to do. So he sent me through an exercise where ultimately he said, hey, I want you to, on paper, track the activities that you do throughout your day that give you this state of flow, that bring you into a state of flow. And flow is just, you can look up the definition, I don't know off the top of my head, but essentially it's just this state of being to where you kind of get lost into the activity that you do. So you'll hear like athletes like Kobe Bryant, who talks about there's certain games where like he goes off and he scores like 50 points to where he is like a blink of an eye and he taps in and he's like, whoa. You know, but he was in a state of flow. It's really where the activity or the challenge meets a level of skill set. That's like the intersection that brings people into this state of flow. So he tells me to track my activities that I'm doing within my day job, so people can do it while they're still in the military. Track the activities that you're doing that bring you into the state of flow and actually document them. Actually write it down. I know it seems obnoxious, it seems strenuous, it's hard to be mindful, but like, do your best. It doesn't have to be perfect, but like do your best to try and track all these things. Write it down, right? And then after a month of doing this, right, every single day, go back to the drawing board. When was I like in a state of flow today? And if there's nothing, there's nothing. But then you might start to see, oh, I was in a state of flow when I was, I don't know, like maybe I was mopping the floor or something. It brought me to the state of flow. Or when I was, putting together this roster for this upcoming event, or like whatever it was, like something brought you into a state of flow to where time seemed to pass like that and you didn't even realize, right? So be mindful of those things, document them. And then what he told me to do after that month, I had this list of things that brought me into the state of flow, and he essentially said, hey, those are the things that you typically enjoy, right? And so I was like reflecting on those activities and I was like, yeah, like I actually do enjoy when I'm doing these things. He's like, okay, now go online and search the internet for job listings that have to do with those activities or those tasks that you are doing, because now you essentially have the career or the thing that you want to do listed there.
Yeah.
You just have to find the job. And like, it was extremely clunky, right? I was like, okay, I don't know what to, for me, it was like data and spreadsheet work that I was doing at the logistics job. That's what got me into a state of flow. And I was like, what do I search? Data spreadsheet guy on Google? Like, I didn't know what to search. So it was super clunky, but I started like digging into it and like reading a bunch of job posts, a bunch of job descriptions. And eventually I started narrowing on, okay, like there's like this data analyst guy. Maybe that's interesting. So I'd read more about like that career. Oh, there's this investment analyst. What is this? So I'm like reading into this. And like the more I was dialing things in, the more I realized, okay, there's this real estate, because I really liked real estate. There's this real estate analyst thing. What is that? So digging into it, and I realized that there's a lot of overlap in the things that they were doing that I enjoyed doing. It's like, there's something here, right? So again, he helped me identify something in the real estate space, happened to be real estate acquisitions analyst, that really intrigued me, that it made me make the career pivot that I did.
That's awesome.
So I would advise everyone to go through that exercise, right? To actually take note of those times where you tap into flow state, and then try to figure out, based on those activities, what's a type of any career, right, that has a job description that fits some of those things. If you find a job description that fits all of those things, then great. Like, you are gonna love your job so much. But even if you find a job that has 2 or 3 of those things, right, you're probably on the right track. And where you end up doesn't have to be where you live forever, right? Where you work forever. So just start trotting down a path and continue to explore, and ultimately you're going to find something that you truly love and a place you want to be.
That's phenomenal. I've never heard that before, but that's I mean, that's a great exercise.
Yeah.
I mean, as you were saying it, I'm like, huh. Because, and then you said the time thing. It's, you really lose track of time when you're in the flow, because it's like, I actually enjoy what I'm doing right now, and I don't care about time.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
That's awesome. I love that. Last question.
Yeah.
What impact do you want to leave on the community?
Yeah, great question. So, I think there's kind of many facets to this thing. A goal that I set a long time ago was, before I die, I want to positively, and I leave it very vague, but I want to positively impact the lives of 1 million people. And I don't know, at the time, I didn't know like what path I would, this is before I even selected the career path that I'm on now. And I didn't know how I would do it, but that's the big thing, is I want to positively impact people. And I think there's a lot of different ways to potentially do that. In the real estate space, I think there's a unique path to create quality housing for people in need, right? Whether that's affordable or something that's not, you know, the brand new high rise that's charging through the roof on rents, right? So if I can create quality rental opportunities that aren't just an egregious rental price, I think that can help positively impact one person that's renting there now, and then maybe several more renting in the future. So I think through the powers of real estate investing, I have the ability to help potentially 1 million people and impact them positively in the future. So I think for myself, that's the vision that I have, is to positively impact the lives of at least 1 million people sometime throughout my life. And I think the vehicle that I'll use, at least in the time being, is real estate investing, and essentially creating a quality product for people to be able to live in.
That's great, man. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you do that.
Yeah, love it, man.
Appreciate you, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. If you support military veterans, military spouses, veteran-owned businesses, and veteran nonprofits, hit the subscribe button below and hit the bell to get alerts on new content coming out. We appreciate your support. If you know of any patriots doing great things in business and community that we should interview, please let us know in the comment section below. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of VetBizTV.